Alright guys, so today we're going to be starting the build on the 340i. This is a build that I've talked about a little bit in the past. Basically, my 440i was very far along when my channel started getting some traction. So I got this 340i and I'm going to build it kind of like a stock turbo daily driver, just a fun, reliable street car. So unfortunately, a lot of this stuff wasn't even available when my 440i was stock turbo. So I'm going to take advantage of all of the new parts and just kind of show you guys how I would build a daily driver. And hopefully this helps you out if you guys are just interested in kind of what I'm doing. I already have a couple parts piled up and you probably have an idea of what I'm going to do from my previous videos. You know, I've talked about kind of my preferences and things that I like or things that I think are important. So we're just going to try to make this as bulletproof as possible, reliable, and make a little more power, you know, so we can have some fun. So the first thing we're doing today is a PCV delete. Now keep in mind, I already have a PCV delete DIY. This is the kit from Ross Racing and they are a channel sponsor. So I've got this kit because I know it's good quality. Instead of just making this a straight to the point DIY, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the PCV delete kit is, why you might want to do it, and just answer some common questions, you know, or maybe some things that I wasn't able to address in my last video. So you guys can watch along if you want to see how it installs. I do have a more straight to the point DIY if you're interested in that. So feel free to click on that video if you just want that detail. But this is for everybody else that's just more curious about why I'm doing it, why you might need it, and something that might help you figure out which one is right for your build. So let's go ahead and get this going. So the most common question that I get from people is why you might need a PCV delete kit. And the whole point of this is to make your PCV bulletproof. Your PCV has to be a part of your engine because the crankcase builds up a lot of pressure. And especially with a turbo car, it's important to have a PCV system that can vent out those gases that are in the engine and they basically need somewhere to escape. So probably the most common question that I get is, why would you need to do a PCV delete? And the reason why I do it is because I just want to make my car bulletproof. The way that your PCV system works, it tries to vent out the crankcase gases, and especially with a turbo car, that's extremely important. You need those gases to be able to come out and get out of the car so that everything gets a really good seal. You don't want too much pressure built up because you guys have seen those videos of people with their cars smoking and stuff. Typically that is caused by your PCV system going bad. So you want to have a good amount of venting in your crankcase so that all of those gases can evacuate. The good news with the stock car is it's designed as a recirculating system, and that's primarily for emissions. You know, they don't like those oil gases and stuff just venting out to atmosphere. But also the nice thing is that when you recirculate it back into your intake, you're basically putting a vacuum on your crankcase, and that pulls the crankcase gases out of your engine. So that's a really nice, reliable way to do it in most cases. Now, the problem with our cars is it seems to struggle to get enough vacuum on the system. And I think a part of it has to do with how our Valvetronic engine management works. On a typical turbo engine where everything is controlled by the throttle body, you generate a lot of vacuum in the intake manifold. And so when your car is at idle, it's pulling that air out really reliably, really well. And that helps make sure that you keep your crankcase pressures down. On our cars, because of the Valvetronic motor, I think it struggles to generate enough vacuum. And that's why on a lot of cars, when you're idling for a really long time, all of a sudden the car just basically blows a bunch of smoke and you realize that your crankcase is not venting properly anymore. So then after that, a lot of people ask me, well, won't a catch can help, or why don't I use a catch can? And the reason why is because I would prefer it to vent to atmosphere just to eliminate that system altogether. The primary benefit of a catch can is if your car is pushing oil, then you can catch it in your catch can. But the engines that I've put this kit on don't really have a blow-by issue where a lot of oil is coming out. So it's more efficient just to have it vent to atmosphere with these dump tubes. Now, if you do think you're pushing oil, it's definitely more responsible to get a catch can, because that will actually contain the oil and not just spill it all over the street. But for me and my use, and like I said, the engines that I put it on, it just doesn't really seem like it needs it in most cases. But just again, to realize a catch can on its own doesn't fix the issue. What's important is converting the system, deleting the internals inside of your valve cover, and having it vent out properly so that you're not relying on the OEM control. Another downside that I forgot to mention in my last video is sometimes the catch can smell inside the car, because where the catch cans are typically mounted is going to be right next to where the cabin is sucking in fresh air. So especially in the winter, when you're driving your car and you've got all the windows up and everything, it can basically pull in some of that smell, and you can smell oil inside of the car. Now, the Ross Racing kit does include a dump tube adapter, so you can put that on top of your catch can instead, and that will allow you to basically run all of the gases underneath the car. As you can see, it's not the easiest thing to route from the top of the engine bay, but you're basically routing it behind where your oil filter is, underneath the car, like next to where your transmission tunnel would be, and then you don't really smell it inside of the car. There we go. Just straighten it out a little bit and you'll get it in there. Now, another thing to remember is that these kits, the style of kit, only works for Gen 1 engines. The Gen 1 valve cover has this cap up here that's removable, and you can basically remove the diaphragm, delete the little flap that can get damaged and cause it to smoke, and then install this cap with the tube that just vents it to atmosphere. Unfortunately, the Gen 2 valve cover does not have this style of cap that you can just remove it and delete the diaphragm. So if you have a Gen 2, like a Supra, M340i, basically anybody with a TU engine, you're going to need to completely replace your valve cover. There are a couple options out there that work. One that's becoming a little more common is the one from Visconti. And basically what he does is he takes the OEM valve cover and completely removes all the internals that recirculate the gases. So you get a nice OEM valve cover that looks stock, but the internals are removed so that you don't have to worry about anything breaking and causing the car to smoke or anything like that. I do think that's a really nice option, but to be completely fair, there's only one offering on the market that truly completely deletes it, and that's the one from Vargas Turbo. I know a couple people that are running it now, and they seem to have pretty good results. Some of the earlier batches might have had some issues, but I know a few people that are running it now without a problem. Now, this is another thing I like about this kit. So we are going to remove this hose. So this is basically where blow-by comes out when you're in boost, because everything else is pressurized by the turbo, so it recirculates back to the intake. This is where it's being managed outside of boost and vacuum, so that's why this is where that diaphragm cracks when you're idling for too long, because there's not enough vacuum to pull a good amount of crankcase pressure out. But anyway, so I like this because you're able to remove this hose and add on this hose. That'll be another dump tube, but you don't remove this hose completely. It still stays plugged in, so that helps avoid the instant check engine light that you get, because it is an emissions component, right? So especially for those of you guys in states that are heavy on emissions, this helps keep your check engine light off. And even if you do get a check engine light code for, anything related to this kit, it's 100% reversible. So nice way to do it. Also, another thing that a lot of people don't realize, that plug on this crankcase hose is a heater, and that's another potential downfall with these kits. Just something to be aware of, especially for those of you that have already installed this with a catch can. You might have noticed that it's very watery. It's not just oil. It looks like there's water collecting in it. And the reason is because there's a lot of condensation that comes out, especially during cold start. The heater on this hose keeps it warm so that the water that comes out doesn't freeze inside of your intake. So that's really important too, especially if you're starting your car and driving it in temperatures where it gets really cold. If you guys have a catch can, just keep that in mind. I know some people like to switch back to an OEM style PCV system in winter, because if those lines freeze, the water will expand and it can potentially cause that hose to burst, and you definitely don't want that. I think we need to remove this intake for a little clearance here. Not the best way to yank on a sensitive sensor, but we'll get the job done. Let me leave this up a little too. This will just make sure that it goes in nice and smoothly without snagging on anything. Push that all the way in. Perfect. Alright, and then that hose will route down there as well. And then it does come with this little rubber cap as well. So you can put this on top of the crankcase hose, because if you don't, then this is basically a big leak. So you're going to want to cap this off, and then I'll probably get a zip tie and just zip tie that on and keep it in place. Also, just something to keep in mind, everybody always sees this filter and they're like, where'd you get that filter? Where is that PCV Delete? What kit is that? It came with my top mount turbo kit, so this is not a PCV Delete kit. It's just because I have a top mount turbo on the 440, there's nowhere for that hose to go. So he includes this little tube with a filter on it so that, you know, you can have a little bit of peace of mind. But the Ross Racing kit does the same thing. That hose that I clipped into there does the exact same thing. So if you're interested in something like that, just buy the PCV Delete, and you can actually route it to a catch can if you want, or you can add on the dump tube and route it underneath the car the same way as well. So lots of benefits. But yeah, hopefully this helps everybody out that had any questions about how these kits worked and how some of the things came together. I do feel like this is something that a lot of people would benefit from. Probably not everybody absolutely needs it, but just to help ensure you have the best reliability possible, especially if you're one of those guys that like to sit and idle your car for a long time while you're eating lunch or whatever. This will just make your car a little more bulletproof. The previous owner sent me some videos, and I told you guys I haven't really had any problems in my ownership, but a lot of the problems that he had kind of indicated a PCV problem. It was smoking a lot, like a choo-choo train, and like I told you guys, there was oil all over the spark plugs when I got the car. Since I've been driving it, it seems like it's been fine. I am going to keep an eye on the oil consumption, so if it does seem like it's pulling oil, then I'm going to need to do something about that, get a catch can and find a way to manage it. But for these purposes, I feel like this is going to do exactly what I want it to. One other thing I want to address before I go, I see a lot of people say that when you run both of these hoses to a catch can, it still creates a bottleneck because that catch can just has one small filter on top, and joining them together doesn't really make any sense. Keep in mind, these two hoses do not vent at the same time. And that's what I was talking about initially. One vents in boost, one vents when you're out of boost. So if you have both of them running to a catch can, it's fine. Only one hose is actually going to be pushing out any smoke or any blow by or oil vapor at a time. Typically when you're at idle, you'll only see it out of that back hose. And then when you're full throttle, really beating on it, it'll start coming out of this front hose. So it's not 100% perfect system, but that's how it works. That's how you know that you're getting the most out of it, because both parts of your PCV system are going to be venting to atmosphere. So yeah, that's basically the Ross Racing PCV Delete kit. Hopefully this helps you guys out for anybody that had any questions, because I don't want to feel like I'm steering you wrong or missing anything when I make these videos, but I don't always think of the questions that are created by what I say. It's not always just a simple DIY. I know sometimes you guys are looking for a little more detail on what's going on and why we're doing it. And this should help make my car a lot more reliable and just something else that I don't have to worry about. So yeah, like I said, more is coming soon. We're going to be adding power to the car, running some ethanol in the car, doing all that other testing and fun stuff that we want. So stick around for that. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this style of video, let me know. Always remember, I use my videos to help keep you guys updated on the latest developments in the community, as well as discuss technical topics that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So subscribe, join membership, all that good stuff. A lot more will be coming soon. So thank you for watching. I hope this video helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.